Hi guys! Today we're going to be working on orders of operations, but as you can see, my screen says GEMDAS, so stick around to see where and how this acronym comes about. In the past, we're given very simple problems like this, where we just have two numbers and an operation to know what to do between them, like 6 plus 2. Here's another example of a simple problem that is given between just two numbers and one operation. And another one, except this one is in parentheses, but still it is also very simple because it only has two numbers and one operation. But look what happens when we put all these simple problems together into one long problem. It looks confusing. This is where we need orders of operation, which tells us what steps to do and how to do them, what orders to do them in. So before we solve for a problem like this, let's go ahead and talk about some rules. What orders are we going to be solving this by? I will be writing GEMDAS down. I know that in the past some of us have learned this differently, and we use different acronyms to help us remember these steps. Some of us might have learned it as "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Others of us have heard PEMDAS, and then now it's GEMDAS. And here's the reason why we've went from all of those acronyms to GEMDAS. First of all, the G stands for groups. How do we know if there's groups? Well, groups will be written with parentheses. They may also be written as with brackets. Some of them may be written using squiggly brackets. I know it's kind of hard to see because I'm using a mouse. And there's a very special type of group where you will see something like this, where it's actually written as a fraction. So all of these are considered different types of groups. That's the reason why we couldn't use PEMDAS anymore, because the P only represents the parentheses. So that's my short version of why we went from different other acronyms to now consolidated to GEMDAS to include all of these brackets and also this special case with a fraction lookalike type deal. The E stands for exponents. In 5th grade, we will not actually be working with exponents, but you will definitely see them in 6th grade and beyond. So an exponent could be something like this: 2 to the power of 3. This does not mean 2 times 3. This is actually the same as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that's what exponents looks like. But again, in 5th grade, we will not be seeing this. M, you guessed it right, stands for multiplication or division. However, multiplication in 5th grade can be written in 3 different ways. So like in the past, you guys know this is a traditional way when we have 2 times 3 with the multiplication sign. Or it can also be written as 2 with a dot hanging in the middle of the two numbers, 2.3. This also means it's a multiplication type problem. And it can also be written as 2 with the parentheses 3. So when a number is leaning against a parentheses, that is also a multiplication type problem. Division is likewise have different ways to represent division too in 5th grade. So for example, you can have two numbers like 6 divided by 2, just like how we normally see it. We can also see it, as I denoted above in my group, it can also be written as a fraction bar like this, where it's 6 divided by 2. Okay, so you just have to be able to recognize these different ways that multiplication and division can also be represented, and it may not be always with a multiplication sign or a division sign. And it is written like this, where the M is right beside the G, is because to me, the best way for me to remember this is because they have the same power, which means you don't always do multiplication first. Multiplication is not always more powerful than division. So when you see a problem with both multiplication and division in that same problem, you're going to do whatever you see first. So like how you read. So if you see division first from left to right, then you're going to do dividing first before multiplication. So even though it is written as MG, it does not always mean that multiplication will come first. That's why I write them side by side to help me remember that, oh, these two are actually the same, they share the same power. So whatever I see first, I will do them first from left to right. And if you guessed A stands for addition and S stands for subtraction, you are absolutely correct. And again, they're written side by side because same thing, addition and subtraction share the same power. So whatever you see first, you will do first. So in the same problem, if subtraction comes first from left to right, you will solve for subtraction first, and it does not always have to be addition. Now that we understand what GEMDAS stands for, we are going to be using it in order to help us solve this very complicated looking problem. So for every single problem, I would expect that you would be writing GEMDAS to the side exactly like how it's written here. And we're going to use it as a checklist for us. So first, we're going to see if there's any groups. Groups are anything that is inside parentheses or brackets. I see that there are a few things going on here. I know that there are brackets, but then inside these brackets, there are also two groups inside this big group. So how do you know which ones to solve for first? Since they have the same power, it doesn't matter what operations is inside of them. We're going to solve for them from left to right, whatever we see first. So we circle the two numbers that we're going to be solving for, and all you have to do is just write down the answer to that problem. And then the next step, we're just going to be bringing down every single thing that we have not used. And I did this on purpose, but do you notice that for some odd reason, where did I get 212? Or it looks like 212, but it doesn't. For a 5th grade student, this is where it gets really confusing. So you have to ask yourself, what else have I not used? Well, I haven't used the brackets. I'm not done with what's inside the brackets. I also need to bring those brackets down as well. So I was done with the first group. Now I'm going to look to see if there's any other groups that I have not solved. And I see that this is my second group that I need to solve. So all you need to do again is to put down the answer and bring down everything else that you have not used. And this also includes the brackets. Now we're going to check to see if there's any other groups. And yes, I do see another group that I have not used. So it is right here. I need to solve for that, and all I have to do is just write down the answer and bring down everything else that I have not used. Again, I tried to leave out the brackets just so you can see something that makes no sense. I did not have 22, but this number looks like it's 22. So this tells me that this brackets right here serves a very important purpose. In this case, I actually don't know what operation is given between this 2 and this 2, unless I go back to my notes and I remember that remember how we said in the notes parts on the previous slides how multiplication can also be written in 3 different ways. Well, this 2 is leaned right against the brackets, so that means that it is actually acting, the brackets is actually acting as a multiplication sign. So in this problem, I have multiplication and addition next. Which one's more powerful? I see very obviously that multiplication is more powerful, so I'm going to solve for that one next. And this leaves me with the last step of addition, and it's going to be 10 as the final answer, and that is it. So a few things that we need to remember before we wrap up this lesson is that for every single mathematical problem that involves orders of operation, I ask that you write GEMDAS to the side the way it is written to the side right here, and use this as a checklist for your problems. Do not skip that step. The next thing that you also need to remember is that multiplication and division. Multiplication can be written in 3 different ways. Remember that. It can be written with a multiplication sign. It can also be written with a dot in the middle of 2 numbers. It can also be written where the number is leaning against the parentheses. These all mean multiplication. Division likewise have 2 different ways that we will write it. So for example, you will have a problem written with division sign, or you may also have something that is written like this, and they both mean dividing. And it's very important that you write M and D on the same line like this, because it reminds us that these are the same power. You don't always multiply first, but you do whatever you see first between multiplying and dividing. Sometimes you have to do division first. And addition, subtraction is the same thing. They're on the same line because they share the same power. So sometimes if you see subtraction first from left to right, you will have to solve for subtraction first before you do addition. So as long as you remember those rules, you're gonna do great. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope that you will find this lesson very helpful. Have a great day.